Hello world, my name is Atticus and welcome back to the break room. Today, something a little different. We've recently wrapped up our playthrough of Chapter 1 of Unsung Story, and we will return to it once more chapters are released. But before jumping into the next game, I believe it's A Place for the Unwilling, I thought it might be a good idea to sit and reflect on our time with Unsung Story, and if this turns out well, I may do this for all games we play on the channel. Just a bit of a break before jumping right into the next one. This video is unscripted, which is why it's not on the other channel, so bear with me as I read through some notes I wrote down. Gameplay in Unsung Story seems very similar to Final Fantasy Tactics with a few changes and additions, which is a good thing, I think, because I really enjoyed Final Fantasy Tactics. It's definitely top 10 games for me, I think. I've not really thought too hard about my top games, but Final Fantasy Tactics, it's probably up there. The additions we've seen so far in Unsung Story are interesting ones. I really enjoy the songbook. And if you plan your moves out well, you get real good buffs to help you in the rest of the fight. It's a fantastic little system, and I look forward to seeing what more they do with it, because just from the get-go I can imagine learning new songs, having a couple of songs prepared to play, so perhaps there's a large list of songs you can bring into battle, but you can only take like 3 at a time, and that creates a good, interesting tactical choice. What do my units have for abilities? Is it combat support or blue? I forget what blue is. What songs am I most likely to be able to create? What songs are going to be the most helpful to me? I think it's got a lot of potential, and I'm looking forward to it. From that, we jump straight into a complaint about archers, so my notes are well thought out. Yeah, I still agree with this. Archers don't get a range bonus from height that I can tell. Maybe like a little one, but the range on an archer always felt short. Okay, and I have noted that range bonus is a passive trait gained at higher levels. So that's good, but it still feels like the archer has to get far too close to an enemy to deal any damage. The whole point of an archer is that they're attacking at range. There is a bit of a balancing issue where if the enemy is able to attack you from so far away, or if you're able to attack the enemy from so far away, you have a unit which is dishing out damage and not taking any damage, and that's just optimal at that point. So it is a tricky needle to thread, but at this point I do feel like it could use maybe a bit more balancing. Like, it's not bad as it is, it just doesn't feel as good as I think it could. So it does make promising use of objectives. It's not always just defeat all the enemies, though it is usually just defeat all the enemies. There's also the secondary objectives that don't let key characters die, and then a few more interesting ones, like defeat the specific enemy and protect key character for X amount of rounds. It's fine when the mission of a level is always defeat all the enemies. That's an interesting tactical challenge, but I think it's always more interesting when a level throws something different every once in a while. Let's see. Units don't, to my knowledge, show how long before they permanently die. Tactics spawned crystals upon unit death. Might Unsung Story do something similar? And I don't know if I ever let one of my own units die, so maybe it already does, and you just don't get anything from the enemies because you're already supposed to be defeating them. But if your own unit dies, perhaps a crystal spawns if it's not one of the key characters that can't die. Maybe I should try that. So far, the jobs feel distinct enough from each other. I haven't been able to play around with having a second job yet, but I imagine that's only going to enhance the experience. What job combinations work best together? It seems interesting. I'm excited to see what all jobs we end up having. Here's another note. Absolutely love the songbook. Absolutely. It's fantastic. It does so far have an intriguing story. It's going to be a short video. That's fine. I'm interested to see where it goes. Bit of a spoiler here. Jump forward like 30 seconds if you don't want to get spoiled. But from what I've seen, what I've read, the story involves fighting backwards through the war that we see getting resolved by the delegates. So time starts to collapse and you start going backwards. There was that one moment with Brienne's who said something as if he was familiar with us and then dismissed it immediately. And I imagine that's because in the future for us, in the past for him, we fight together at some point. And so I'm excited to see where the story goes. Let's see. Item progression. Store and plunder are the only ways I can think of to get items. The former is expensive and the latter seems unreliable. So I think that's just a note on how the system seems a little rough around the edges at the moment. I haven't used enough items to think about any balancing of them, but just getting the items is a little rough. And also I lost that one sword because it was equipped to Alcir and then we changed jobs. And then I guess we just kind of threw it out into the ether. Speaking of changing jobs, Elementalist seems incredibly strong in the early game compared to other jobs. It strikes me as a glass cannon type job, high damage, real fragile. But I was able to walk my Elementalist through the thick of danger, and by the end of the mission, he'd only lost half his health because every enemy dies in 1 or 2 hits. It could also be a debuffer since 2 of its later abilities deal damage and have the choice to apply some status effect, but its damage output would have to be significantly less. Granted, it could just be that the enemies in the first chapter have high defense and low resilience, so the magic damage is exacerbated by that fact. The listed weaknesses is that the Elementalist is susceptible to damage and its abilities cost a fair bit to use, but I never ran into the latter problem going through the scenarios with my Elementalist. The former I could see being an issue if any enemy survived long enough to hit the Elementalist, but so far that's not happened. Also notice that the AI seems to not care about environmental hazards, which makes sense for machines that may not recognize events as potential danger, but when playing back through the chapters for this debrief, Serena twice stood in front of vents and almost died because of it, despite being the one to point out their potential usefulness and danger. So that's a brief list of thoughts. Maybe I'll expand on this. I probably won't. But yeah, come back next week for a place for the unwilling. Till then, I have been Atticus. Thank you for joining me, and I will see you next time.